asking what they don't want to face. I mean, red-green comes to the top of the list. Humans does too, so not surprising in the Grand Prix. Those are the other ones making top 8 to face it down. But yep, once again, we're going to get to see this matchup.
Yep. Jason Henry is playing a full playset of Green Sun Zenith. He has a Throne and a Acidic Slime as bullets that he can access, and otherwise it's getting Strangleroot Geist or Hot Mass of the Fells or a mana creature on turn 2 or whatever the case. So.
Yeah, and I really like the full set of Green Sun Zeniths. I know some people cut down on them. One of the things which I like about it in this deck is that Strangleroot Geist is one of your best cards. I mean, it's by a fair margin is like your best card in a lot of matchups.
Yeah.
And you want to run as many of them as possible. Right.
And it's also like, once you have birds and elves, you need some sort of hedge against flooding, and it's very difficult for the draw to be bad, right? So it's protecting you against a lot of the spots where the deck loses steam, which is where you have all this ramp early to facilitate your draws, and then you're out of gas.
Right. I mean, one of the bigger rules of the deck I kind of have played with is you have to have a turn 2 threat. So with Green Sun Zenith, it gives you a turn 2 threat a lot of the time, but it's also it's not dead at all. It finds Hunt Masters. It finds your Acidic Slime. It's always a relevant card. The cost of one more, I think, is pretty negligible to be running any less than 4.
Yeah, I agree. He has 2 Galvanic Blasts and 2 Incinerates as his removal suite, and has 3 copies of Sword and War and Peace and 1 copy of Sword and Peace of Famine.
So going over to Tom Ma's deck, it is Esper Delver. So still this is much more similar to the build we saw. It was Shuhei was it Nakamura was running earlier today? Yes. We saw it's running 4 Lingering Souls and 4 Geist of Saint Trapped and 3 Honor of the Pure. So once again, it's only the 8 white creatures, but Honor of the Pure. So it's really hedging against other token decks, other sorts of Delver decks. In this matchup, I think it's probably a fairly weak card. The red-green decks will, your creatures will still trade with the Strangleroot Geist.
Yep.
So while maybe trying to meta against the mirror, I think that sometimes this Esper Delver deck is losing points in other matchups like this one. Right, both players.
Tom Ma looks happy with his 7. Also looks happy in general.
Tom Ma always happy. Waiting on the starts here, but
no. Henry is going back to the well.
Especially, Henry needs. So yeah, red green in this matchup always needs a turn 2 threat, preferably off a mana creature. It needs to. Like I said, from the get-go, it's contesting the board state from turn 1, and it needs to have a hand that can do that.
So a question I have for you, obviously, since it's fairly stock at this point, I'm assuming that just playing birds is correct. But in a deck that is effectively a beatdown deck, do you think there's any argument for cutting bird for Pilgrim because you're still ramping into your 4s in the same way? The bird you have no 3-mana plays except for Zenith, which you can still cast.
Right.
So is there an argument for having a 1-power beater even at the expense of some of your colored mana?
Well, even the Llanowar Elves very rarely turn sideways. I think it does happen. The fact is that the birds having flying is almost as aggressive as the Llanowar Elves having an extra point of power. You have play swords. So sometimes actually, as weird as it sounds, I actually would say in the deck the birds are a better attacker than the Llanowar Elves. Besides that, a lot of decks are moving toward Hell Rider, which is the double red is probably the most restrictive part of Hell Rider in these builds. Birds gives you permission to run more Kessig Wolf runs. Jason Henry's only running 2. In the builds I've had up to 4 Kessig Wolf runs.
Henry is going back now for 5 cards.
And as long as he has a hand that's long on Strangleroot Geist, he can still stay in a game on a mull to 5. Obviously not preferable, though.
Yeah, a lot of these games end with one player still having a bunch of cards left over in their hand, which sort of indicates that you're better off mulliganing for your curve or your spot removal spells or whatever than keeping a bad 7.
Right.
Something that's often, in the matchups that go along with card drawing, it's easy to rationalize mulliganing because you can recoup the cards somewhere down the line. In the short matchups, it's also easy to rationalize mulliganing because if the game's going to end in 3 or 4 turns, then people are going to die with cards in their hand anyway, so you might as well mulligan for a good hand. It's the medium-term matchups where the mulligans are the most devastating, in my opinion.
Right. Well, especially it depends on the matchup. if you're the kind of deck, say a ramp deck. A ramp deck's one that's really loath to mulligan. It doesn't get many cards back, so you know, a lot of the times, you know, you can't really reliably keep, like, many 5-card hands from a ramp deck say are very poor. It's hard to find a good one
because you need a mix of everything.
Yeah, there's 3 pieces. You need lands, you need ramp spells, you need threats, and the fewer cards you have, the less likely you are to get that. All right, game starts, and we get to see what Henry kept. He has a turn 1 mana creature. He has the Huntmaster.
It's not a bad 5-card hand. Has
a turn 3 Huntmaster in it, and you know, obviously a gut shot out of Tama would be great. He does play 2 of them. The biggest thing is, like I said, this without a good Henry, I mean, obviously he's risking drawing more lands. He's not really contesting the board early on. Could fall behind here.
Yep.
Or similarly, Mana Leak is a very scary card for him.
Yep.
And just Evolving Wilds out of Tama. So no turn 1 Ponder or Delver.
A Hell Rider off the top for Jason.
However, remember, he doesn't actually have double red.
Yep.
All right, I believe his lands are Mountain, Forest.
Correct.
Okay. So the awkward part is, in order to enable that Hell Rider, you have to draw another land, which is really the last thing he wants to be drawing.
Yep.
Tama getting a Plains, so presumably having a Glacial Fortress or something. Deck only ever needs 1 white mana source. Alright, draw out of him, and...
Is that a gut shot?
I believe... We'll see soon enough. I can't imagine Tom would slow roll. That is a gut shot. Can't imagine him... He's gonna...
My favorite interaction, Snapcaster plus Cataxian Probe.
Sure, a great Elvish version.
Just fire it off.
He sees the Hell Rider, nothing to worry about. I think at this point he's got to just put himself to 14, and yeah, that's essentially a time walk. There aren't even 4 lands in Henry's hand. So not exactly the typical start from a Delver deck, Yep. Involving Wilds into Coral Merfolk.
For the 4th and final round are being posted.
Should be good enough here.
2 Giant players, your final
and Henry
round
just drew his second mountain on the previous turn, so his Hell Rider is actually on.
And that's one of those situations where you probably would, even if you draw a mountain, would like to shuffle your hand before playing a mountain. Tom Mott, actually, that's a
not with the best imaginable follow up there.
No, it would have been great to have another threat there, because now he has to represent Mana Leaks at this point.
That's that weird looking promo bird off the top.
Not a fan?
Not so much.
Yeah, I would probably agree. I like the original ones.
Right. Snapcaster for another gutter ball.
But that's pretty risky. He actually has given Henry the opportunity to... Henry's going to get to have a Huntmaster of the Fells. It's possible that Tama doesn't have the Mana Leak, but if he doesn't have the Mana Leak, I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of his opening 7.
I think if he has Gataxian Probe, Snapcaster, it's pretty hard to throw away. There's just so many draws beyond your initial one.
So Henry, despite a very auspicious beginning, I actually think is now ahead on the board.
Yep.
Delver really can't let Huntmaster resolve the matchup, or must do whatever possible to not let it. Tama looks like he has another Honor of the Pure in his hand. Henry won't block here.
Pairings for round number 3 of the Modern Challenge
and
are now going up.
Geist
3-3 Geist.
Players in the Modern
Excellent.
Challenge, please find your seats. Your pairings
With
are now going
Hell
up.
Rider in Jason Henry's hand, threatens an awful lot of damage. Threatens 3, 4, 5. Yeah. If he swings the team here, Geist will surely eat the Huntmaster.
Yeah.
But right now he'll be taking 5, 6, 7 most likely, and going to 5. If he goes to 5, yeah, that's still the correct play. He can leave back both. I don't know if I like swinging. Well, he probably doesn't have. Do you think he has a different play here than the one he made?
Well, I mean, I don't like cashing in the Huntmaster there for 4 damage, which is effectively what he got out of that. I can see sending in Hell Rider. I think that's fine.
Tama was at 12, yeah, so he drops to 4. He took 8 there, 3 off the attacks. Yep, that's 8. So, yeah, I'm not sure I like that either. Another Honor of the Pure. And this is lethal? This is 6, and that's 14 exactly. So Tom Ma with the win, closer than it seemed.
Yep. Yeah, well, he took all that damage off his Phyrexian mana spells early on, so even though Henry didn't do a lot to impact the board there, Tom was already at 14.
Right. He went, actually, 12 on his own. He cast 2 gut shots.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The
That's like a gut shot, right. So 8 self-inflicted points.
Which actually makes a card like Hellrider very scary. So, okay, out of the board, we have, for Tom Ma, we will probably see he is playing Timely Reinforcements. Almost certain to bring that in. Outside of that, he has Celestial Purge. I don't really see him using it. I think it's probably just the Timely Reinforcements. He does have 2 Revoke Existence if he's really worried about Sword of War and Peace.
Over on the other side here, we have 2 copies of Combust. Seem fine. A Daybreak Ranger, which you can go get with one of his 4 Zeniths. And everything else seems not too exciting.
Yeah, now, if Tom was not on Lingering Souls, if he hadn't seen black out of Tom, he might side in Ancient Grudge in the matchup, just for the fact that one of the few ways that Delver, like, the 2 things that he's scared of in the matchup are really fast Delver draws and unanswered equipment.
Yep.
If he thinks that Tom's on an equipment plan, he might try to board in some number of Grudge.
Yeah, it's always, the grudges against the Delver decks are always sort of a weird thing. I still don't know where I stand on that stuff because the equipment is like kind of difficult to set up if you side into spot removal anyway, and you risk getting caught with these dead grudges if your opponent's either sided at the removal or not even on a removal plan to begin with.
Right.
Or equipment plan rather to begin with. So
I think the tip off would be if I saw Invisible Stalker out of my opponent.
Yeah, I mean,
then I would do it. It's got to be equipment.
Right.
But because he hasn't seen it, I think Henry would leave. I would leave them in the board at the very least. So kind of
wondering how long it's going to take until we get into Spectral Fight land because after that Legacy deck from Sacramento won.
Right.
Been thinking about Invisible Stalker plus Spectral Flight, or certainly Geist of Saint Trap plus Spectral Flight is a nice little Mondo combo.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only real draw is the Geist of Saint Traft interaction.
Right.
At the point where you're putting it on your Invisible Stalker, you might even be better off running something like Bonds of Faith.
Sure.
Because on a Stalker, they're an identical card, but Bonds probably with more utility outside
Set
of
up
that.
your Snapcaster, turn into a 4/3 flyer. It's like so much better. Some angles, man. Your Delver doesn't flip, that's fine.
Sure.
Some assembly required, no big thing. I still like, winning 2 games in a row is never an easy thing, but I still like the matchup kind of from Henry's perspective here. Certainly going first, if he has a reasonable 7-card hand, I think he's a heavy favorite here in this game.
Yeah, the mana it's really the low end of his deck. It's the mana creatures and the Strangleroot Geists that really pulls him through. He has this great finisher in Huntmaster, but the ability just to keep making 1 and 2 drops on back to back with each other is really hard for Tom to answer.
Yeah.
Lingering Souls goes a little bit of the way in that with Honor of the Pure, I suppose, but they still all end up trading with Strangleroot Geist. So I'm not sure there. So we are in round six right now. As far as undefeated decks, we are probably down to about 5 or 6 undefeated players right now.
That sounds right.
Yeah, judging from what we had 2 rounds ago, we were about 5 to 6 undefeated players. I said so. Really, we'll only end up having at the end of round 7, 1 or 2 people undefeated. So it should be a very, 7-0 should be a definite top 8 with kind of what we were saying before. It should be a smaller 9. We'll try to get you an update on the other undefeated archetypes. I believe David Scharfman, also playing Delver, still undefeated at 5-0 as well.
Yep.
Or at the very least playing on table 3. So
one can safely presume.
Right. At the worst, he has a draw.
Yep. Nicholas Lassett sitting next to him, grinding away. Turn 1 Rootbound Crag from Henry. So what do you think about the 3-1 sword split? I've seen it fairly commonly in a lot of these decks.
You know, it's something I actually don't understand. I'd love to ask everyone. It seems to be very popular. I'd love to ask people about that because it's not War Piece. I think unless you have a good reason not to run it, is simply the better sword. So this hand out of Henry is something I might actually ship back against Delver. Even though it's got some of your best cards in it. It's like precisely the wrong half of your deck for this matchup.
This hand's also very soft to mana leak, which is a big risk.
Right. I mean, say Tom plays not a Delver here because he doesn't answer to a Delver, but something simple like an Invisible Stalker. Tom doesn't have those, but many Delver decks do. So he can land some early threat to even just a Geist of St. Traft or something. He probably doesn't have time for that, but.
But Jason did.
He drew the birds, and that's as good as he can hope for.
He's gonna snag it.
Right. Tom needs a window here because as soon as Jason represents 4 mana, Tom really can't tap out again. The snag here buys him time to get something down. It's still not a great something to get down. It's still not a threat. So Tom's still not ahead on the board. And he's going to have to somehow now sneak in other spells.
Yeah. So the question there is, do you play the sword or do you get your bird back online? And since he
I
has
think I like
land,
the sword. Yeah. Bird can sneak under mana leak at this point.
So Lingering Soul is going to bust out some 2/2s.
So Tom's opting to let Henry have his Huntmaster. Maybe because he has no choice in the matter, but that is still very scary with a sort of War and Peace online.
It's possible that Henry will actually want to go bird equip. Certainly, having drawn a second bird makes that more attractive since now he can
equip.
He can go into the following turn with a ton of mana available to him.
Yeah, I think, and that might be better at this point.
Yeah, I think that's
and that's what he's going to do.
Path.
All right, so bird and sword now puts Tom in a very rough situation.
Yep.
He has another Honor of the Pure, not exactly what he's looking for. He'll run it out and make some more spirits.
And
just absolutely adorable tokens. He's going to swing them both.
They're both 3/3s.
Both 3/3s, so this is pushing 3 damage. Tom's opting to race, which is hard when there's a sort of War and Peace and a Huntmaster on the other side of the battlefield. But
fortunately, because of the Vapor Snag, that means that for him, that either another Vapor Snag or a Snapcaster Mage could be a huge swing in the race.
Right. This is very much a different take out of the Delver deck, as really we've seen it play like a Lingering Souls deck here, like a black-white tokens deck.
Yeah.
The Galvanic Blast window for Jason Henry really has closed now. And at this point, it's become almost a 2 damage.
2 to the head. Yep, 2 to the head.
Or almost a card that you keep in your hand to gain life.
Although he did play a land before combat, so I'm not sure if he's planning on just holding back entirely this turn.
I wonder if he holds back the land and swings and gains life, plays Huntmaster and equips, does he win this race?
37.
Yeah, I feel like the sword's almost got to go back onto the bird.
Alright, so he's going to play Huntmaster. Right now, the double Anthem, I remember this with red-green aggro, when you play against black-white tokens. The first Anthem is nothing, the second Anthem is terrifying. And, if you look at his hand in this board, it really showcases why, flipped Huntmaster isn't going to kill anything at this point. Yeah, so Jason Henry actually not with many ways to deal with the 3/3. So no attacks out of him. I'm not sure, can he win on this board, though, without attacking?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think that I would have
I think I would have sorted, played Huntmaster, moved sword, passed. I don't know if that's enough. It still might not be, but I don't see how this line...
When you have Hellrider in hand, you only need to get in like one clean shot, right?
Right. So I mean, and I'm not sure. Like, you have to count it out. Maybe he counted out and found out that it wasn't enough, or doesn't believe it to be enough, and that's really understandable. All it takes is one mana leak out of Tom to blow that line up. But this one, I think Tom just turns his creature sideways every turn, and I don't really see. I don't know. It seems like Tom's in the clear. Right now, Jason can't. Jason's going to. I mean, his plan is to Galvanic Blast the token that gets blocked, taking 9, and then.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily like if the Huntmaster. If Tom does nothing on his turn, if he just says go,
then he'll probably let it flip.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then you can just go Hell Rider, ship, everything plus Galvanic Blast.
Right. So it depends, but I mean, you can block, and then if Tom does play something, end step kill the. I think you still kill an attacker, because then you take 9, and on the next turn you can block with a sword, and you bought yourself another turn of attacking, which is really a relevant turn. I'm thinking pretty hard on this. This is a pretty pivotal turn, but outside of attacking with his team, I don't see what other things can Tom be contemplating here. He's leaving 1 back.
Yeah, he's just worried about Hell Rider plus Galvanic Blast. Like, he has to do that math on his end.
Right. So he wants to make sure that that's not lethal. Which is somewhat of a tell that Tom doesn't have a Vapor Snag.
Well, I believe he has Snapcaster in hand. The thing is, like, this hits him for 6, so your tokens are still lethal next turn, assuming you are able to get all the birds out of the way.
Right. So Henry drops to 12. And all right. More
add another Lingering Souls.
And unfortunately, the land he drew was an Evolving Wilds and not not something that came into play untapped. So he won't be able to flash it back. But Lingering Soul is a great draw here. So I think that makes it much safer to swing with 3, because in Tom's mind, he already knew that Jason was dead on next turn's attack.
Yep.
So why let Jason know that until he absolutely has to know? Yeah, so next turn, Tom's threatening an attack for 15, now an attack for 12, but still enough. Because it's still enough, well, I guess the birds can chump block, so Jason can buy himself another turn. He doesn't know about the Snapcaster, so he actually doesn't have that turn, but in his mind, maybe he's bought himself a turn. Jason, looking at the board, remember, so he does have Hell Rider. His other card he drew, we are not sure of. It is... don't know.
I think it's a Wolf Run.
I don't know if that helps him right now. Good card for sure. It probably will make Jason's next turn attack lethal. But if that attack doesn't exist... So Tom just...
While we're waiting.
Technically you can't do that, but no one actually. I guess he has to wait till Jason does something. No complaints from Jason, as it will happen. So with Hell Rider, Jason's gonna be thinking. If a swing from Hell Rider makes sense, if it's enough, it is probably not enough, but he doesn't really have another thing he can do. He can't move the sword twice. So instead he's going to opt to put the sword on Huntmaster, hit with Huntmaster, move sword back, say go, and then flip his Huntmaster, which I think is actually...
It also means he gets to leave both of his birds back on defense.
Which is what he has to do, because otherwise he's dead.
Your standard winner box is waiting on you.
But the Snapcaster in Tom's hand is going to make both of this moot. So he gains 2 life, goes to 14. Well, actually, if he goes to 14, Snapcaster puts him at 13. Maybe is that enough? Actually, actually Jason only will go to 1. Missing, yeah, so the life gain off the Sword of War and Peace. Very relevant. So Tom's going to have to... He has Hero Bladehold in his hand. So apparently he's boarded in. He has 2 Hero Bladeholds in his deck, which he's boarded in. Actually a little trickier for Tom, so he doesn't have the last point of damage. And he has drawn a mystery card. Plenty of things that would do it, a gut shot, a vapor snag.
Yeah, he's got a ton of draws from here, but I don't think that was one of them.
A mana leak actually would also be a fine draw from here. As it would, stop Hellrider from killing him the next turn. So he's leaving one back, seeing that he doesn't have it.
Which means that Jason actually just straight up doesn't have to block.
Right. I mean, he'll still block the free one. He'll block with the birds.
Right. I assume Tom Ma was indicating that whichever one you shot with the Hot Master is the one I'm leaving back.
Right. I really like that. There's a savvy play on Jason's side to not play his Wolf Run there. To wait on the Wolf Run play and to get the extra life. Possibly just to not play it at all.
Yeah, and it's also could be a trick for next turn's Alpha Strike potentially. Well,
if he did play the Wolf Run here, actually, he would be able to block, tap both birds, pump his birds, and kill a token. I don't think that's going to be relevant.
Yeah,
here.
that doesn't. He's going to die next turn.
Tom's next
not.
swing
Right.
is getting there. So Tom's plan is to Snapcaster Vapor Snag. Just do that. Yeah, Snapcaster Vapor Snag his way to making this not matter. He probably has to Snapcaster to Vapor Snag away the Hellrider before attacks would be my guess. Or whatever the sword's on, possibly. So he makes 2 Lingering Souls tokens. Tom is left with... Well, at this point it's mostly just counting math. Both players have their... have their plays made up. Tom, I believe, with 1 card. So Sword of War and Peace, not too big of an issue. So in math, remember that Ravager of the Fells does trample for 1. And Jason probably has to run out Hellrider first. He wants to make sure he can play around Mana Leak here.
I mean, he's not really in a position to play around anything now. He's kind of hand up.
No, I mean, you'd want to do that before, say, moving a sword.
Oh, sure, yeah, for sure.
Looking at so Tom with 1 card in hand, it's a Snapcaster Mage. He will Vapor Snag something. I think without doing it right now, I believe the math adds up for Tom Ma here. He'll be able to block 2 things. Bird will deal 3, 4 trample damage for 3 more. I believe Tom... Yeah, it looks to me as though Tom has sufficient blockers to make this work. If Jason Henry just plays the Wolf Run, obviously Vapor Snag will be fantastic.
I think Jason's just debating about if he can afford to play around Mana Leak or not. Does he need to play the land first?
It looks like he's also done Strangleroot Geist. That's actually, I believe if that is a Strangleroot Geist, it's a very solid play. Solid draw. Now it kind of makes you want to recalculate and see if this is enough. I think he still ends up short.
Yeah. Assuming Tom doesn't allow him to go to attacks.
About to fire.
Yes.
Please come to the public event stage. Booster
The Hellrider cannot be allowed to be in play when attacks are made. So both players jockeying though. Really, the game is decided here. We just have to see who got it. Henry's play will be to make Geist, make Hellrider, turn sideways, cross fingers.
See where we're at.
Just enough mana to play out his hand. That is... I'm not sure what that is. It's a face down card. Oh, okay, it's another token. He's out of adorable tokens and he's using regular ones. Oh my, he hasn't left up his double green. So he's not planning on playing Strangleroot Geist here.
Okay.
Which is fine. So he's planning to move the sword. Appears he's going to move it. All right, to Ravager.
Right, yeah, this play is lethal, assuming that there's no Vapor Snag involved.
Right. Because then Ravager. Well, I mean, you kind of have to figure when Hellrider resolved and Tom didn't scoop, you'd have to assume that I think you assume there's a Vapor Snag involved, right?
Yeah.
So. All right, Snapcaster down, so he's gone to attacks. Tom's, as long as I think Vapor Snagging the Hellrider here should be lethal.
Correct.
He's going to do the Huntmaster, Ravager the Bell.
Same. I mean, it's the same.
The sword doesn't actually go back to his hand. It's fine. I mean, it can't be re-equipped. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is not lethal.
Attention Magic players.
So
Nathan
this should be a
Calvin,
game for Tom
draft
Law.
number 38. Your draft is ready over at the public event stage. Once again, Nathan Calvin of draft number 38. Your draft is ready over at the public event stage.
Snapcaster Vapor Snag
Snapcaster
claims another,
Vapor Snag.
another victim. Another notch in the belt.
Such an inconspicuous card. So, say Vapor Snag was not around and it was just unsummoned. Does it matter?
I mean, the 1 point always matters. I mean, for an attack.
To what degree do you think, though? Would this deck, would we still see this interaction being as good as it is?
I think it would still be part of the metagame. Obviously, I think you would see fewer decks with 4. But